Former Liberal staffer Brittany Higgins has lost her defamation case against the woman who was her boss at the time of the alleged incident, Linda Reynolds, the then Home Affairs Minister. Now, this is a very brief video, because I am about to get into the reasons why this case failed. But first, just a quick recap for those that were not around or following this case in 2021. In February of 2021, it was revealed that in March of 2019, Brittany Higgins had been allegedly raped by a colleague in Linda Reynolds' office. Now, it was not alleged that Reynolds did anything wrong. In fact, she was praised for how she handled the situation at the time, offering Higgins her support and ensuring that she got access to counseling. However, Higgins later went on to make a number of media appearances where she stated that Reynolds had not supported her and had in fact made comments to the effect that it was her own fault that she had been assaulted because she had consensual sex with a colleague. Higgins also claimed that Reynolds had made comments to the effect that she should have known that the workplace was a boys' club and that nothing would be done to the colleague who had assaulted her. Reynolds denies these allegations and took Higgins to court for defamation. A defamation case is relatively easy to prove. All Reynolds had to do was show that she had been harmed in some way by the allegations, which was very easy to demonstrate given that Reynolds had to give up her ministerial position and was the subject of much media criticism. The real difficulty in a defamation case is proving that the statements made were false, and that was Higgins' strategy all along. She argued that the statements were substantially true and that she had made them in good faith. However, in a 38-page judgment handed down on Wednesday, Justice John Burns said that he was not satisfied that what Higgins said was substantially true. He said that although Reynolds had been heavily criticized in the media, there was no evidence that any of that criticism was accurate. So, basically, Higgins tried to argue that the statements were true and therefore could not be defamatory. But the judge found that they were not true and therefore they were defamatory. So Higgins loses the case and will have to pay Reynolds $150,000 in damages. Now, I won't go into the details of the judgment because it is quite technical. But basically, the judge found that Higgins' evidence was vague and unreliable, and that she had deliberately left out important details that would have made it clear that her statements were not true. Now, obviously, this is a very difficult case and there are a lot of issues at play, but ultimately, this was a defamation case, not a sexual assault trial. The judge did not make any findings about whether or not Higgins had been assaulted. And even if she had been, he said that it had no bearing on whether or not the statements were true. So that is why this case was thrown out. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I will try to answer them as best I can. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.